Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from 6th Canto, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, Chapter 13, titled Indra Afflicted by Simple Reaction, Text 11. Nainang namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswati vyasam tato jayapatiraya nashtaprayashva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatam shloke bhaktir bhavati naishi Tayendra sma sahatapam nirvritir amum avishad vimantam vachatam prapta sukhayantyapino gunaha Tayendra sma sahatapam nirvritir namum avishad vimantam vachatam prapta sukhayantyapino gunaha. Would anyone like to try to read the verse?
Ayandra sma sahatapam nivritir navum avishat primantam vachyatam praptam sukhayantyapino gunaha.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Tayendra sma sahatapam nirvitirnamumavishad rimantam vachyatam praptam sukhayantyapino gunaha.
Thank you. Anyone else? Daya, by that action. Indraha, King Indra. Sma, indeed. Asahat, suffered. Tapam, misery. Nirvriddhi, happiness. Na, not. Amum, him. Avishad, entered. Rimantam, one who is shameful. Vachayatam, Vachyatam, ill fame. Praptam, obtaining. Sukhayanti, give pleasure. Api, although. No, not. Gunaha, good qualifications, like possessive opulence. Okay. Translation. Following the advice of the demigods, Indra killed Vritrasura, and he suffered because of this sinful killing. Although the other demigods were happy, he could not derive happiness from the killing of Vritrasura. Indra's other good qualities, such as tolerance and opulence, could not help him in his grief. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. One cannot be happy by committing sinful acts, even if one is endowed with material opulence. Indra found this to be true. People began to blaspheme him, saying, "This person has killed a Brahmana for the sake of enjoying material happiness." End quote. Therefore, in spite of being king of heaven and enjoying material opulence, Indra was always unhappy because of the accusations of the populace. Om Jnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtadhindale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharani Vishesha Shravani Paschati Adhishita Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nitya Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gauravakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Tayendra sma sahatapam nirvritir namum avishad rimantam vachatam praptam sukhayantyapi no gunaha. Following the advice of the demigods, Indra killed Vritrasura, and he suffered because of the sinful killing. Although the other demigods were happy, he could not derive happiness from the killing of Vritrasura. Indra's other good qualities, such as tolerance and opulence, could not help him in his grief. So here we encounter a foreign aspect of this culture, of Vedic culture, and the psychology of the people that imbibe this culture, that are born into this culture. They are raised in it, and the world of basically making vows, keeping vows, sacrificing your body for the sake of protecting others, the cultivation of knowledge only for the sake of cultivating knowledge, deriving happiness just from knowledge itself, the world of protecting cows and as one's own children. So when a Kali Yuga brain reads this, it seems to be, what's the problem? Indra, you got what you wanted. You killed your enemy. Now you've got opulence. You have your position as king of heaven. Your emperorship, it's unparalleled. Such a political position in the entire universe. Even within the world we live in, the last 80 years on the Earth planet, it seemed to be the peak of human civilization in terms of technological advancement and the pursuit of so-called happiness. So it seems that in known human history, that humans have never reached this zenith, automating everything through artificial intelligence, having the desire, even a nation having a desire even to travel to other planets. But this culture here is that it's so advanced that you get the power, you can amass the political power, you gain sovereignty not over one planet, but over an entire planetary system. So Swarga Loka, that's a heavenly planet. And Indra, being king of heaven, he has dominion over an entire planetary system. And yet he's unhappy. So, and Prabhupada, he is explaining why that is so. So in the fourth canto as well, we encounter a similar situation where Daksha insults Shiva. And after Shiva creates Balabhadra, a demon from his hair, and he kills all the demigods, and all the demigods go running to Lord Brahma. And Lord Brahma tells them that you can't be happy by insulting an exalted person, a saintly person, a great personality like Lord Shiva. So similarly as well, in this instance, Indra is also suffering the reaction of killing not only a Brahmana, but a great devotee. So it may seem exotic to us. Why is it that Indra is unhappy? Because he got what he wanted. Similarly, even with Arjuna's grief as well, in the Bhagavad Gita, he expresses one reason, he expresses to Krishna why they shouldn't proceed with the battle, is that how will we enjoy Krishna when we've killed all our cousin brothers, grandfathers, teachers? How can we enjoy the kingdom and the opulence we derive from it? Because they won't be there to enjoy with us. They'll all be dead. So this kind of world of Dharma As we've explained before, dharma means that which activities that sustain. So these warriors, these intellectuals, and the mercantile persons in this culture, they understand at a very fundamental level what makes the universe go round. Not only the world that they live in, the planet that they live in, but actually what sustains the entire universe. And so when there's a disturbance in that system and the principle, they affect it at the core of their heart. So Indra, this grief that he's experiencing, Prabhupada explains that Indra was always unhappy because of the accusations of the populace. So this grief, it's not like the grief that A-list celebrities experience when they get cancelled in mainstream culture. Many of you may know what this cancel culture is that if you say something as an A-list celebrity, which the mainstream media doesn't agree with, and it's generally along the lines of a liberal perspective, and you don't have a liberal perspective, then endorsement deals get cancelled. Different contracts that you may have, other subsidiary income that you may derive from selling different products and merchandise, those get cancelled. And your so-called millionaire and billionaire status can just disappear overnight, just simply because of what you tweeted. Yeah. So this grief, it's not like that. This kind of grief, it's not like that. Just like with the grief that Dhruva Maharaj experienced when he was insulted by his stepmother. Stepmother told him that if you want to come onto the lap of your father, Maharaj Uttanapa, then you'll have to take birth in my womb. And 5-year-old Dhruva was so afflicted with grief that he was prepared to do anything, even not only sacrifice his toys for play in the comfort of his father's kingdom, but he wasn't afraid to actually enter the forest. So here at Nagari, we have 200 acres of forest. If you get into an argument with a devotee, say, we live in the men's ashram, and you get into an argument with somebody, you're afflicted with so much grief that you don't want to go back to the ashram. You go into the forest and you're like, I'm not coming out again. Or I'll just come to serve Radha Damodar. But whatever, I'll just come out of the forest to do my rostered service and then I go back into the forest until I find Dina Bandhu, the friend of the poor, till I find Supreme Lord in the forest who's going to help me gain a greater ashram than Red Oak. So such grief, it's unknown to us. Yeah. But this is what it afflicts them at the core of their heart. And it's because they, as a Kshatriya, the psychology of a Kshatriya is that by sacrificing your body for the purpose of upholding justice, and ensuring that the innocent and the weak are protected, in exchange, you get opulence. And so when an injustice is performed, especially if you perform the injustice, it's worse than an existential crisis, because who you are is all about sacrificing your body. And then with Indra, he has killed the Brahma. And not only that, he's killed the Vaishnava Brahma, because the other demigods weren't really privy. They couldn't really see just how advanced Vritrasura was. But Indra, in his actual personal conversation with Vritrasura before he killed him, he could understand this is a much greater devotee than I am. Yeah. And obviously, when you feel this way and you've understood the position of a Vaishnava as being greater than you, Basically, that Vaishnav is a Shiksha Guru. And so it's like if you had to kill, and you do kill Shiksha Guru. So this is the grief that Indra is experiencing. And then when people say, as Prabhupada is citing here, this person has killed a Brahmana for the sake of enjoying heavenly material planets. Yes, it's like you killed somebody for the sake of becoming temple president, a Vaishnava Brahmin. This is how capital of an offense that Indra has committed. Of course, it was within the Lord's plan that Vritrasura gets killed, but Lord Narayan, and this is part of the genius of Lord Narayan as a shelter of everyone, is that you are so attached to opulence, now you will get the opulence in such a way that you'll actually never want it. Yeah. So the Lord is always making these kinds of arrangements for the Karma Mishra Bhaktas, the devotees who have want to serve the Lord, but with opulence. But now Indra has actually received, uh, in one sense, the mercy of the Lord in this way is that even your opulence will not be a source of your happiness because the means with which you've had to acquire it has been through criminal means. You've had to, yes, according to Dharma, according to the fight, you have to kill your enemy. But the whole episode has been such that you had to make enemies with the Vaishnava. And that, yes, that is a source of grief. So even with Arjuna as well, we can see as well, not, he didn't want this situation, but he had to fight his own grandfather. So when the Hridayananda Maharaj describes it very nicely in his book Quest for Enlightenment, it's a series of lectures on the Mahabharata. And basically the scene that he's describing is the Pandavas, they were born in the mountains, in the Himalayas. Right? So, and for their company, they had sages. And up until 12 years old, they were born and raised in the mountains. So they had deer skin and everything. So now, after Pandu um, uh, succumbs from the curse, so he was cursed to die, and he succumbs to that, and then the other mother, Madri, she through mystic power, she had a similar power to Parvati as well. She also just generated a fire and died to accompany Pandu. And so the scene that he's describing is that there's these five boys, and there's a mother figure, right, coming down, and then sages are holding a palanquin, and there's two dead bodies on top. And these young boys, I think the ages were the eldest was Yudhishthir, who was 12, and all of them were split 1 year apart. So between 8 and 12, like that. And they're coming down. They all have deer skins. They just, young boys playing this and that. And they're boy sages. And then everybody who is seeing, the whole populace, they're seeing these young boy sages. And they're like, oh, that's the great Pandu, because news had went through the kingdom that Pandu has fallen. He's died. And so now the Pandavas are coming back into Hastinapur. So as they're coming down the mountain, everybody is saying, oh, these are the young boys, Pandu's sons, who were born of demigod fathers. And there's the great Pandu and Mother Madri. They're over there. They have fallen. They've died. So when everybody looked, they could see, oh, these are actually young sages. They weren't seeing young kshatras. They were seeing young sages, and rightfully so, because they were raised as sages. And so fast forward to the battle of Kurukshetra, you're asking Arjuna to kill his grandfather, who took the position as a father, who raised them as a father in the absence of their own father. So this was how strong of a relationship it was, and also their mentality. The mentality of the Pandavas was like Brahmanas, and it persisted. And that's why some of the decisions that they made, it just seemed like contrary to what a Kshatriya would do, because they were raised as Brahmins. Yeah. So, and then you couple that with the fact that they are Vaishnavas. Their hearts are very, very soft. Yeah. And so the grief that Arjuna, Yudhishthira Maharaj experienced after having to kill grandfather Bhishma, it was very, very intense. So, yeah, so from that we can understand to some extent Indra's grief as well. So I just want to read, let's see, is paraphernalia. Excuse me. So a king, for him to actually be happy, there's certain elements that need to be in order, and this is described by Angira Muni. So you'll hear about this later on in the next chapter, but I just want to skip ahead and read what this paraphernalia is. The great sage, so this is from 6th canto, 14th chapter, text 17. The great sage Angira said, he's speaking with Vritrasura in his former life as Maharaj Chitraketu. My dear king, I hope that your body and mind and your royal associates and paraphernalia are well. When the 7 properties of material nature, the total material energy, the ego, and the 5 objects of sense gratification are in proper order, the living entity within the material elements is happy. Without these 7 elements, one cannot exist. Similarly, a king is always protected by 7 elements: his instructor, Swami or Guru, his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends. So Indra had killed his instructor, Vishwarupa. His ministers, they were happy, right? His kingdom was in order. His fort had been restored, his treasury restored, his royal order restored, his friends. But the populace, some of which populace was insulting him. Then he continues here. So you can, these elements, not all of them were in order, Indra. And so he couldn't be happy completely. Angira continues, O king, O lord of humanity, when a king directly depends upon his associates and follows the instructions, he is happy. Similarly, when his associates offer their gifts and activities to the king and follow his orders, they are also happy. So in this instance, Indra followed the direction of his royal order. They told him to kill Vritrasura, but he wasn't completely happy. Yeah. And then he says, O king, are your wives, citizens, secretaries, and servants, and the merchants who sell spices and oil under your control? Are you also in full control of ministers, the inhabitants of your palace, your provincial governors, your sons, and your other dependents? So because of the capital offense of killing a Brahmin, everybody was criticizing. So they weren't actually under his full control. So he didn't have the public opinion. And then Angira continues. If the king's mind is fully controlled, all his family members and governmental officers are subordinate to him. His provincial governors present taxes on time without resistance, and not to speak of lesser servants. So the prime accusation that Prabhupada cites in the purport is that Indra, the public opinion on Indra is that he killed a Brahmin for the sake of attaining, becoming the king of heaven, and for the sake of enjoying heavenly material happiness. And so, in their opinion, his senses aren't under control. He did it out of lust. And so, therefore, according to what Angira is saying, if the king's mind is fully controlled, all his family members and governmental officers are subordinate to him. They weren't subordinating themselves to Indra. They were accusing him in this way. And rightfully so, because the whole episode, it began due to attachment to his own senses by insulting Brihaspati. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So from different angles, this grief is actually multi-layered that Indra is experiencing. As practitioners of Bhakti Yoga, we should use this grief. We might experience a similar type of grief in our life where, because we are not completely on the standard of pure devotional service, Anya Bilashita Shunya, there might be mixtures of some jnana, attachment to cultivating knowledge, attachment to wanting to serve the Lord in a very specific way. So karma, Mishra Bhakti. Yes, so you might actually even have some desire for mystic power. And so the Lord, He'll arrange for the fulfillment of that desire because you're very persistent. As a loving father, you'll be like, okay, you can have it, but you'll have it in such a way that the means to acquire it actually makes you miserable, just as Indra is miserable. So when this happens, we should take more shelter of actually hearing the holy name. We should take more shelter of hearing about pure devotional service, its qualities, hearing about how great devotees in times of external distress, how they also thought of Krishna. And the Pandavas are a very great example of that. So this grief is actually an opportunity to go deeper in devotional service. And the space of that, or at least the activity of going deeper is that you're hearing, you are chanting, and also you're praying. So this Vandanam, yes, it offers shelter. So here, as we know, there's 10 subject matters of the Bhagavatam, and one of them is a sun, Oshanam. I think it's something else, Sanskrit. Anyway, the English is that the Lord is actually the shelter of all living entities. And so here Indra was looking for shelter in the relief of regaining his kingdom. So being reinstated in life as he knew it. Life as he knew it was, I'm the king of heaven, I'm a Kshatriya, I perform devotional service. This is how it's supposed to be. But he had lost that. And so and so he turned towards criminal means. He killed Vishwarupa out of fear for losing the kingdom again. He killed Vishwarupa. And so that's a chain reaction. And so we should turn to the Lord for shelter. So in times of loss, times of reverses in our spiritual life, we shouldn't turn to karma. It'll just create complications for us. We should turn to devotional service, turn to prayer, and the Lord will actually point the way. And it's not easy because the Lord doesn't always show you. Yeah. He just has shown the Bhagavatam and how devotees that have taken shelter of him this is what happened. So he's shown it to you indirectly. So in principle, you should be convinced of what will happen by actually taking more shelter of Shravanam Kirtan. Hare Krishna, have any comments?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I was just thinking of this whole chain like this of events,
Yeah.
starting with Indra's Guru Aparad.
Yeah.
I was thinking that, Indra here
Yeah.
is in a very tough situation.
Uh,
Like, you could say it's a Dharma Sankata,
mm,
right? A dilemma of
mm,
what actually is done.
mm,
Because on the one hand, he has to kill Brahma, and on the other hand, like, he is the king,
yeah.
Vitasara is the enemy.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that, if we start making bad decisions,
Yeah.
then we might eventually find, ourselves at a point where there are no good ones.
Right.
And then, if we're trying to, shift to actually, following the dharmic lifestyle as much as possible,
Mm.
what do we actually do in those situations
Mm.
where, like option A is bad and option B is bad, and you don't want to just run off to the forest and renounce everything, which
Yeah.
might be the best option actually.
Yeah.
So like what do we actually do,
Yeah.
like practically speaking, in
Yes.
situations of Dharma Sankirtan?
Mm. Yeah. So you do what Arjuna did. You take shelter of Krishna. And Krishna was acting as a guru, right?
Right.
And so a guru will always represent Krishna's instructions. So I think we should be convinced that, as Jared Maharaj writes, he quotes in his book Vanity Karma, the philosopher Kohelet. Am I saying it right?
Kohelet is the name of the Lamentations.
Okay, yeah, that book, right?
Yeah.
And he quotes it, and he says basically in there you'll find aphorism that there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
So even as complicated of a dharmic situation that we may be in, we should be convinced that devotee has already encountered this. There's been a devotee who's encountered this. So you just need to find out what they did. And so, I mean, you could turn it into a research project.
Yeah.
Usually, these situations are emotional.
Yeah.
You can't just like adopt an academic means to find out. It requires like a sense of sobriety. And so you turn to the guru. You turn to a guru, your guru, with all of your emotions, all of your attachments, and you just say, "Look, I'm just caught between a rock and a hard place. I just can't see a way forward." And so the thing with a guru, and we can see with Krishna functioning as Arjuna's guru, is that he told him, Sarva Dharman Parityaja, Mamekam Sharanam Praja. So you just give up all this dharma and just surrender to Krishna. So this is the special facility for the, at least special prerogative that a guru has, right? So suppose even as a devotee, you're trying to find a social situation that you can fit in and actually be peaceful, but you can't find it. And then the guru says, look, you obviously you can't fit in into this situation, but they say do it this way. So put yourself in this situation. But the guru is not really saying that that situation then will become an example for others. He's just saying it's for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he has the power and the means to give you what no other demigod can give you, and that is liberation. So this is what a guru can do, is that he can point the way. And if you don't follow it perfectly, but you do it with sincere effort, he'll actually incarnate and come back and fetch you and continue to guide you until you perfect it. So this is the special prerogative, guru and acharya. They're able to actually do this. Just as Krishna was telling Arjuna, Sarva Dharma You just give up all varieties of dharma. Because this variety A, it's going to lead, you can see there's a complication. Variety B, it's also bad. So what do you do? So then you just follow the guru's direction. I don't know if that answers.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Tarka Prabhu. He pulled up the verse from second canto, 10th chapter. There are 10 divisions of statements regarding in the Bhagavatam, the creation of the universe, sub-creation, planetary systems, protection by the Lord, the creative impetus, the change of the mind is a science of God returning home, back to Godhead, liberation of the sum embodiment. Yes, thank you, Prabhu. There is Ekavir Prabhu, Mother Rajalila, have a hand up.
Hari Hari, Hari Bol, Nagari Prabhu, Natagoranga. Jai. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a nice theme that you shared about Indra's loss. And I was, you focus on that theme quite a lot in terms of his grief. And we know that grief comes from loss, having some loss. And it appears to me that Indra's loss mostly was his prestige because he was instructed, right? He was under instructions. And my question is more not about Indra, but about the populace, right? It appears that his population, although he took such nice care of them, that they had expectations of him and they were kind of lacking in empathy of him because they thought that he was supposed to, they didn't know that he was under instructions. They hadn't, it appears like that they didn't know he was under instructions. And so therefore they were very critical as a populace. So I'm just a little bit curious in terms of practicality of that, in terms of our, daily life as devotees.
So your question relates to why, are you asking why the populace was not factoring in the fact that he was under
Not why, we know why. It's because they don't know. They had no idea of history, or they have no idea, right? We know that. However, we see that these pastimes are usually given to us to help us, in our daily practice of bhakti. So yeah. So my question is, what are we to learn from the populace and their reaction?
So if we find ourselves in the same situation,
Yeah.
and how can we navigate this? So like we're being criticized by the populace. Is that the question?
Or that the populace is criticizing us? Either way.
Yeah. So for example, like our friends, family members, they're criticizing us that, say, for example, we took to devotional service. Is that,
Or
are
that
you
we
asking?
or that we may have done something and maybe no one really understands the backstory of that thing.
Yeah, I mean, this is very common for devotees is, okay, you studied physics, you basically on the doctorate level, you're studying physics, you studied aeronautical engineering, you were a nuclear engineer, you just had this big position, and then you come to central Pennsylvania, out in the middle of nowhere, and then you're just talking about how nice it is to actually scrape up cow manure. It just doesn't make any sense. It looks like this decision was made in complete ignorance of the pathway to material happiness. So it's very common for devotees to be subjected to this kind of criticism. Yeah, and so, Mother, I think the way devotees navigate this is that they have higher knowledge. So they made that decision because um, it's for their self-interest, right? So a devotee who gives up, who turns their back on, a pathway for material opulence, and then they criticize for it. No, it's that we have now taken shelter of the source of all opulence. We've taken shelter of the source of liberation, Mukunda. So this is one name of Krishna. Therefore, it seems like, yes, you turn your back even on your family members. You're not doing your duty as a son to take care of your elderly parents. But that's why Krishna, he says, Sarvadharma Parityaja. So Krishna, he has the power to balance everything out. Uh, so whatever it is that the populace criticize the devotee, that they're not actually doing their duty. Um, the devotee knows that, no, I am giving order to them. And so in this way, you can actually navigate that criticism and tolerate. With Indra, he couldn't tolerate that because he killed a Vaishnava. Yeah, so it's more acute criticism, and so it hurts more. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yeah, thank you so much. It appears to me though that Indra's he killed a Brahmana, and yes, he was suffering because of that. Somehow mixed within that, it appears that Indra's weakness was his prestige, as his false prestige of thinking he was a king. And so the suffering was not, it was like killing a Brahmana, but within that, the subtlety of that was that his prestige, it seems, from just hearing the pastime, it seems that that was really what he was trying to protect. That was his loss, the loss of his false prestige, or of his thinking that he was, that he's great, he's the, king of heaven, whatever. So yeah, so I'm just reflecting on what you shared. You shared many wonderful points, and so yeah, I'm just kind of reflecting on it and looking at it from different perspectives.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other contributions?
The book, I think,
Oh, there's a question in the chat. Okay, as an extension of Mother Brother Leela's question, how can we, like the populace, practice empathy if we are serving under someone like Indra, who may be experiencing intense purification or challenges? So I guess the other question relates to, instead of criticizing Indra, can we be compassionate to Indra? So yes, one thing that helps is this um, revealing one's mind, and revealing one's mind in confidence, and also uh, having somebody reveal their mind. So if you could get close to the leader, and actually, that would actually be ideal, because then you could actually understand as a person, as a Vaishnava, they are a devotee, and understand how they actually being afflicted, and therefore you can get very intimate information. And this way it'll be very easy for you to actually understand and develop the compassion. In the absence of that, you try to serve, um, do some service, but it gets very complicated, these situations. Like, for example, there might be a high profile fall down. So the devotee was giving shelter to so many other devotees, and the practice was very nice. And then you find out that, oh, they were abusing their power. And so then they get criticized by the society of Vaishnavas, and they have to face the consequences. So, how to develop compassion? So Krishna, he says, that for such a soul, as long as they, one shouldn't consider them to have um, yeah, one should still consider that person to be saintly. And so you just take it that, well, this is Krishna's words. Krishna's words are holy, and so he says such a person whose determination is still to go back to Godhead, even though they committed an egregious offense by abusing other Vaishnavas. Krishna, he says about such a Vaishnav that they should still be considered saintly because of their determination. So if you see that, okay, their determination is in the right place, then they are actually not to be criticized. So these are Krishna's words. Now, to feel that, yes, I would say then this is what the question is asking. It's that, okay, how can you actually become compassionate to a leader who's now reforming themselves this way? Thakur Prabhu, have you ever had to do this in your extensive history in practice?
Yes. Yeah, I've seen a lot of things. Yeah, one of my thoughts about this is that in my experience, when you lack empathy for others, or you are critical of others, if you fail to take the time and trouble to try to understand the circumstances of another individual, and you sometimes jump to conclusions or just simply become critical for whatever reason, without understanding the actual circumstances, particularly when dealing with devotees, somehow or other by Krishna's arrangement, at least for myself, I can say that whenever I'm subject to that kind of a failure, the result is that I myself wind up experiencing exactly what that other individual is going through. I wind up finding out firsthand, and so I'm taught to be empathetic. I understand by practical experience because I fail to inquire and to try to understand, or to simply give someone the benefit of the doubt. And so Krishna kindly arranges that I wind up directly experiencing myself that kind of misfortune. And so I've learned from that. I still make mistakes because I'm really slow and dull-headed, but that's been my experience consistently, that whenever I become critical of others, I wind up experiencing exactly what they're going through themselves. Then sometimes I become subject to criticism in the same way that I was critical. Anyway, that's just it's one of my experiences, but I've learned a lot about working under other devotees. I've seen a lot of unfortunate things occur, lots of, as you say, high-profile fall downs. I've been through that with a lot of the individuals that I was working under. But I did, in most cases, take the time to inquire, or just, talk to them, just being friendly. Sometimes my relationship was already sufficiently intimate that I was aware of all of the circumstances, and it was easy to be empathetic. In other cases, I inquired to try to find out more about what was going on, and because there's so much that we don't know, we can't understand what's happening to other individuals. We're aware of our own circumstances, but not others. And when you hear from an individual what happened, what they were going through, the things that they were subjected to, then it becomes very easy to to be empathetic. You have to understand. If you can somehow place yourself in another person's shoes, it's hard to do sometimes, but if you can hear from the individual, then it's easier to understand. Anyway, I try to make a practice of learning from other individuals what they're going through, and I've seen these things play out so many times that I take it for granted that there are a lot of circumstances that I can't understand, that I'm not seeing. You learn to give people the benefit of a doubt. In general, I just I feel badly for anyone who goes through some sort of misfortune, and I just understand that the circumstances of material life are extremely trying. It's very, very difficult. Becoming a devotee and declaring war against the material nature is incredibly difficult, and terrible things happen sometimes. A lot of struggles. Devotees go through terrible struggles, and sometimes they're harboring some pride, and at some point or other they get smashed through some terrible humiliation, and it's it's not always easy for others to understand what that individual has gone through. Sometimes it's actually a transcendental arrangement. Something extraordinary happens for their purification, but everybody is undergoing purification in different ways. And if you really gain the favor of Guru and Krishna, you undergo some really extraordinarily intense purification. It may look to others as though someone is suffering some terrible misfortune, and that it must be a result of their karma, their activities that brought this upon them. But in the case of devotees, that's not necessarily the case. There's no karma in devotional service. Devotional service is a karma, and sometimes the apparent misfortune that devotees go through is actually the mercy of Krishna in an extraordinary way. Anyway, we should never jump to conclusions, and we should always give devotees the benefit of a doubt, and every devotee should be regarded with great respect. Every devotee is very, very special and very rare. They should all be respected. Sometimes they may fall into Maya, and that should not be surprising. What's surprising is when they don't fall into Maya. That's miraculous, because from one perspective, we have everything going against us, but we have the mercy of Guru and Krishna, and so it's possible to progress in spite of the extraordinary adversity in material life. We should be compassionate towards every devotee and try to understand that if we haven't experienced what they're going through, we very well may one day. Sometimes we may become puffed up and think, I'm not subject to that particular fault or flaw, and it won't happen to me. If you have that kind of an attitude, if you think that you're better than others, that's the kind of mentality that will result in Krishna's mercy taking the form of you having to experience that yourself. So it's good to be careful. Don't behave in such a way that you invite misfortune for yourself, even as a lesson. Be respectful of others. Try to understand. If you can't understand, ask them. They'll tell you, here's what happened. Try to understand. It's important. Otherwise, we become offensive. Hey, I didn't want to take us away from Darshan. Hare Krishna, Prabhu, thank you for your class. Wonderful to hear a little Mahabharata. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much. running late, so you can please continue the discussion. This is a big topic, how to develop compassion. This question, points to a big topic, how to develop compassion for a leader who has been compromised and is undergoing purification.
Yeah, not just leaders, but anyone.
Yeah.
Any devotees, particularly any devotee. Bhagavad Gita, delighted that you mentioned Bhagavad Gita 9:30. What is it, 29:30? Very important to understand. It should be taken seriously. Sometimes I see that devotees want to minimize the importance of those verses. They feel that there are limits. That perhaps in some circumstances we should respect an individual who has apparently performed some abominable act. But this particular instance here is not one of those. And in this case, we should condemn this particular devotee because he did something really abominable. But there's no distinction like that made by Krishna. It's only, abominable is abominable, and he doesn't go into gradations of abomination, just simply that sometimes, someone may do something really, really terrible, but what's important is his determination, his intention. Things happen sometimes that are contrary to our true intention. Our determination is to do the right thing. Our determination is to act properly in Krishna consciousness. But sometimes Maya deludes us, and we wind up doing something that we sometimes never dreamt that we would do. We should, if we don't learn compassion for other devotees, it will be taught to us, sometimes in really harsh ways. That's Krishna's mercy on us, that if we fail to learn on our own, we'll be taught forcibly in a way that might be particularly unpleasant. But it's prudent to try to learn these things and learn it as early as you can. Try to understand the circumstances of others. There are all kinds of unseen forces at work. I have seen devotees sometimes do apparently terrible things, and in spite of what Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, devotees condemning them, and sometimes such individuals are accused that, he was never really a devotee to begin with. He was masquerading as a devotee the whole time. He was really some kind of a predator and a cheater. That's a very, very unfair accusation to level against a devotee. And in my experience, I've seen this happen to some wonderful devotees. I mean, wonderful devotees, extraordinary devotees, very advanced devotees, very knowledgeable devotees, very sincere, wonderful personalities. I can think of one who was the individual that was, apart from Srila Prabhupada, most responsible for rescuing me from serial life. An amazing personality, but some things happened in his life, and devotees just condemned him unforgivingly and destroyed his spiritual life, leaving him no avenue for resurrecting his spiritual life. And so the balance of his life largely wasted, having no shelter. I had occasion to speak to him after decades and express my appreciation for the things that he had done for me. And he broke down and cried piteously, expressing his love and appreciation. And I could feel the incredible pain, the hurt that this individual was feeling, having been rejected by the society and the people that he loved more than anything and gave his life for, and then was rejected because of a mistake. And he described that his circumstances were such that he was regarded as the biggest, most powerful personality in all of ISKCON, and he was. And but he explained that it's lonely at the top. He had no association, no association. Everyone looked at him with awe and reverence. No one took the time to be friendly with him. There was nobody that he could confide in. He was completely alone with immense responsibilities. He took on the responsibility of managing the entire movement. Everyone relied upon him, all of the GBC, everyone. And then suddenly he was rejected and not even given an opportunity for rectification, just basically rejected by everyone and left alone. It's a horrible injustice, terrible thing. Wonderful soul, wonderful personality. It's terrible to see these things. And I've seen it happen numerous times. Another leader that I worked under, extraordinary devotee, did tremendous service, loved by everyone, and then, was sannyasi, became a sannyasi at a very young age, I think the age of 24 or something, he took sannyas. And later on, he couldn't maintain his sannyas, he got married. And everyone rejected him. No one wanted anything to do with him. No one would even be friendly with him. And he was just left alone. And no shelter, no friendship. He went away. Wound up becoming a Christian, where he found some fellowship, some people that were actually compassionate towards him and accepted him in spite of some apparent fault that he became a Vantasi. He fell down from the sannyas. The Christians didn't care. So he became a Christian. What a shame. What a terrible shame. He had immense potential. He did tremendous, tremendous service in ISKCON. But devotees lacked the empathy and the maturity, the compassion to accept him. It's terrible, terrible thing. I don't think we do that kind of thing anymore. Gradually it became commonplace for sannyasis to leave the sannyasa ashram and remain accepted by the society. I think that's mostly the case now, but there was a time when that was not the case. Terrible thing. It's immaturity. ISKCON, unfortunately, for many years, in its infancy, a lot of immature behavior, and still we're still learning, still growing. We are a very, very young movement, relatively speaking, extremely young. There's a lot to be learned, and learning comes slowly sometimes. Anyway, those are some of my thoughts. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for your enriched commentary and underpinned by your extensive experience and practice. We have a comment from Jagannath Pandit Prabhu. I think JPG. Is that Jagannath Pandit Prabhu? Okay. The verse mentions that the demigods were happy with his victory, but devotees are para dukkha dukhi. Will they not be feeling his misery? The emphasis is on the happiness of the demigods. So yes, they were happy because their fear had been mitigated. So Vritrasura created such a fearful situation. And everybody basically was destitute. They'd become homeless. And so now the happiness that they're experiencing is like now going back home. And so, yeah, to regain what you had lost, that which is most dear to you, you can't really be miserable. So to feel the misery, then it's basically what we've been speaking about, developing the compassion for Indra, and that requires a high level of consciousness. John of Vatsala, she cited a very nice verse. Basically, the conclusion of the class of today was what to do when you undergo a reverse in your devotional service, where Krishna gives you something that which you attach to, but in such a way that you don't want it again. And typically it involves a great deal of misery. Tatte nukampam susamikshmano kunjana evatma kritam vipakam ridvag vapurbir vidadan namaste jivetayo mukti pade sadaya. Back, one of Prabhupada's favorite verses. My dear Lord, one who earnestly awaits for you to bestow your causeless mercy upon him, all the while patiently suffering the reactions of his past misdeeds and offering you respectful obeisances with his heart, words, and body, is surely eligible for liberation, for it has become his rightful claim. So this is the verse that came to our mind, to John of Vatsal's mind, to keep praying and take shelter while undergoing sinful reactions. So thank you, Jano, for that reminder. Thank you, dear devotees, for this is a big topic. Krishna's words, specifically this verse, Apichetsu duracharo bhajate mam ananyabhakt sadur eva samantavya samyag vyavasito hisaha. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated in his determination. So this verse is a cause of a lot of discussion, a lot of controversy, a lot of fighting. As my Guru Maharaj says, typically there's two sides to a story, but in devotional service, there's a minimum 108. So we can't really understand these topics on a superficial level. It requires deep deliberation. As we've said, from both sides. Typically, we start with the victim because the victim have the lesser power, and that's very natural. But also, after that, then there should be a consideration of the perpetrator, who is also a devotee. And that's part of why it's such a controversial to even consider that. In the Christian world, it's called radical forgiveness. So yes, we have all the tools and knowledge to navigate these very complex issues in a way that uplifts everybody. So thank you so much. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Go Pramanandi Haribol.